Hey guys, welcome back. And this is part 2 of AI will replace software as we know it. If you're coming back and haven't seen the first one, check it out here. I talk about kind of AI as possibility of replacing software, especially retirement software. Today's video is more the actual mechanics of a demo that I want to show you of what AI was able to build me in terms of a retirement scenario that I was looking at. Or if you're coming for the first time, I should say, please like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. I love doing these videos. It really helps me because I get to research these topics. And I just want to share them with you so that in the hopes that maybe for yourself, it can really give you something that maybe you could use for your own needs, whether it be something in the AI space or even for your own retirement planning. So again, please like and subscribe, and I really appreciate you coming here to listen. So onto the video. Basically, I am using Claude, and I really love how Claude does its work. It's very, very accurate. It creates applications and output that are really just world-class in my opinion. I mean, I've seen some stuff come out of it that are just like stuff you can give to a client if you were like in that space. I have developed kind of my own retirement bot, if you will, agent, if you will. And the way that Claude sets up its application set, it uses a concept of instructions and protocols, which is what I made, that is essentially curated information to train the model about retirement. So there are a lot of white papers out there on the internet about different kind of withdrawal strategies, tax optimization issues for RMDs, as well as Social Security and IRMA. And all of these concepts that are really important as part of the retirement planning arc, they're stuff that I built into my agent. I've curated the information from other places and I put them into Claude's concept of memory, if you will. So every time I start her up, she knows a lot of stuff already about me. And that's really the benefit, because yesterday I saw a post where somebody said that, posted something actually from Claude stating that she couldn't do retirement planning because she didn't know how to do Monte Carlo simulations. She didn't understand certain aspects of taxes. But I found that to be erroneous because I've actually done it and it is doing it. The argument then becomes, okay, it's doing it, but how do you know it's right? Well, how do you know any of this is right? In fact, I don't think there's any way to predict the future, but I think the constraints and the framework of modeling for potential retirement scenarios, if you will, for lack of a better word, this is just a way to, as long as you have inputs, to be able to get a proper output. But all these systems can do is just give you a plan to help you plan. That's all. I think a lot of people look at it, or this is my opinion, they look at it like a scorecard that they have to hit 100%. In some way, that's like a guarantee. I also think a lot of people, and myself included, when you first look at the number that gets forecasted out, it's like some millions and millions of dollars. Now, I know, I'm not saying that that can't happen. If you believe in the theory of compounding and you kind of invest in very risky list type of asset classes like an index fund, yeah, chances are you will make millions of dollars just from compounding alone. But there's no guarantee. In fact, my personal feeling, the way I look at using these tools, is only forecast out 5 years. Now, there's something I'm doing kind of unique. What I'm doing is, now that I got a baseline from both a vendor product, which is Boldin, I use that as well, and in my own retirement planning solution here with the ETA, I basically took a snapshot and I told ETA in my long-standing conversation to keep track of the portfolio and what the Monte Carlo said at the point that we snapped it at. And I'm going to come back to her at the end of the year, which is what we agreed, and she's going to nudge me to see where we are. And we're going to refine our model accordingly. And that to me is the best way to get to probability of success, because the following year, she'll have more information about my particular case, and then she can readjust the portfolio or expenses or some other event, like say for example I have a one-time event, she'll know because of the model when I'll input it in there how that affects the projections later on, so that she can incorporate that as part of the scenario to refine the expected return and to readjust pieces in the analysis. This gives me a lot of flexibility as opposed to a vendor product that just kind of books you into that one path that In some cases, you don't even know how it comes out with its output, which is kind of where I stood with a lot of it. I didn't know how it generated its information. But at least here, I programmed Etta, or pseudo-programmed Etta, vibe coded, her to know everything about me. And I've given her and told her explicitly constraints that I want her to be very sensitive to when it comes to forecasting. And I'm going to show you that in a few minutes with the app. So what we're going to do, I'm going to show you on screen, is a fictitious family. They're named Alex and Claudia. They're both 51 and 47 years old, and they've got a profile that I'm going to share with you. And we're going to have Etta generate the exact same app that it generated for me in the real world, and the reason why I made this video. So we have a fictitious family, Alex and Claudia. Alex is 51, Claudia is 47, 2 children, David and Christina, 17 and 14. And they live in Oregon, and they have an intention to retire at 60 years old or 61. They have a liquid portfolio of almost $800,000 in pre-tax accounts, and HSA worth $76,000, which brings it to a grand total of $876,000. A primary home worth $800,000 with a mortgage of $200,000. So their total net worth is $1.476 million. And we're going to use these inputs for the basis of our analysis. Finally, we're going to require a income stream or a yearly living of $84,000 a year. Alex will take Social Security benefits at 62, where I got $2,450, and Claudia will do that at 65, where she'll get $1,733. By the way, these are just assumptions; they're not, real figures. And on top of which, there's other issues related to spousal benefits for Social Security, but we will kind of avoid talking about that for the sake of the demonstration. Okay, so we're going to get into the demonstration part, but let me explain a few things before we get there. One is that what I love about Claude is that if you buy the pro version, you have this concept of what's called a project. And in this project is everything related to a subject matter. So this is where it differs when people say that AI is not really good at doing something like retirement planning. Well, in a project, what you're essentially doing is isolating a subject matter into one spot. And what we're going to do is in this spot, we're going to train the model for essentially whatever kind of intelligence you want to teach it. So in this case, it's retirement planning. And what I've done in that case is I've created this project. And this is nice about Claude. And this is why you can do like applications like a Monte Carlo, or if you ever want to kind of tune some kind of parameter in your retirement forecasting, you can do that in a project because it has state management, meaning across chats, it's going to remember. Now, if you notice here, there's a memory, which means that as these chats are happening, there's critical components that somehow Claude remembers about you. This is where you don't edit this, Claude does. And it remembers stuff about you between chats. And that's really very important because in my case, for example, I've got several different subjects. They're all related, but they're tackling different problems. Now, when I talked about using AI to curate a subject matter, you have to do that in what's called a protocol. And in this case, it's called an instruction. And what the instructions do is essentially teach the system how to do retirement planning. And it also is the way you set the tone of what you want Claude how to respond to, whether authoritatively or, kind of more gently. It's all this kind of things about what you want your AI kind of persona to be in with Claude. So that's the beautiful thing about, I think, that differs between Claude and other AIs is this ability to do. But in this spot are files of which are basically telling Claude to utilize across chats. And these files are essential reference information about many, many different things. And in this case, I've given it a number of different artifacts that are really important for it to understand about retirement. On top of which, I've given it this article. It was just released from Vanguard. It's a very, very extensive report about retirement profiles across its customer base. this is all statistical information about retirees that is absolutely important when you're factoring in certain kinds of scenarios around retirement. So I've put that in here so that I remember. There's a couple of other documents here. This is but this one is more interesting too, because I found this somehow, I can't remember where, but document is a PowerPoint slide about retirement, but it takes an approach for like a Star Wars. Like if you notice here, this is one of the admirals in Star Wars. So it takes that approach to retirement planning to teach it very easily to you. Sort of like the theme is that you're building a spaceship that needs to get someplace. In order to do that, you got to build the components to be able to get to that place. And so that's what this document has. But it's got some really good feature sets in here, the way to think about retirement in terms of like phases. So I put that in here because it's very important. Okay, so now we're going to go to Claudia and Alex, and what I've told you is essentially the same thing. I've told you that this is this person. They're need $84,000 a year, but what I've told Etta to do is to act like a CFP, and it knows about the protocol as well as the instruction set because it's in the project. So I've told it to do that. But what I've also told it to do for the purposes of what we want to try and make is that I have an app that I'm going to show you that it's going to generate. Well, it's already generated it because it does take some time. So I didn't want to belabor you to watch it, but the app will be generated in real time. So what ends up happening is you feed this to the engine just like a chat. And then it starts going through its process. So here was the first step. I'll start by reading the Era Forecaster V2 template, which is in the project right now. It's essentially the original app that I built. But what is very, very interesting about Claude and Etta in general is that it will take that input and then it will enhance it. And in fact, what I gave it originally, because I asked it to do an RMD analysis and a Roth conversion schedule, in my original application, it didn't have that. But in this version, which I'm going to show you, it put something very interesting in there, and I want to show you what it created. So in order for it to simulate all the returns through different sequences, it's going to take the S&P 500 and the bond data. And then one of the other things I also tell it to do, and this is one thing I love about AI that an application cannot do, is if you want to enhance or update or refine logic, it will update itself and give you the output in real time. You can't do that with a software because somebody would have to program that. So for example, the big beautiful bill, all of those tax related issues have to be programmed by a developer. And I do remember when I was working with Boldin, this is right before the new administration came in, we didn't know what the tax rates were going to be. So there was like a placeholder for you to put in your taxes. It was a toggle. Do you want the old tax schedule or the new tax schedule in anticipation of that? Well, with AI, you never have to do that because it will know. It knows that as part of its function in building an RMD schedule, it needs taxes and it's going to look at the most current rates. And as long as they're published in the locations I've told it, it's going to update its memory accordingly and give me the output. So you never have to really program it. It's actually going out and curating the information. She's saying now, I have all the context I need. Now let me build a full ETA forecast app for Alex and Claudia. This is a substantial React artifact with RMD schedule, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of it, you're going to get a document that is equivalent to this countdown. And she's going to tell me some information. So what she said was, as of this date, which I ran March 28th, and today's March 28th, 2 items relevant to this demo. So here's the output. We're going to get 4 interactive tabs. One is a portfolio fan chart with the Monte Carlo simulator. We're looking at an income waterfall. Then finally, one of them is the Roth conversion and RMD schedule. This is the core deliverable that I'm asking it to build. And then it's going to build scenarios, which I've asked it always to do, because I always look in terms of worst case and best case, right? And then I always try to anchor that to what does that look like in the past, in some event in the past. So this is what we get produced. So I'm building, this was built on the fly. So this, just as I clicked it right here, she has built this entire demo for us, or I should say this website. And if you can see here on the screen, Basically, according to the inputs that we got and kind of all the Roth conversion schedule, we have a 94.94% chance of, succeeding, only 5.8 chance of failing. And what 94% means in the real world is that, and I asked Etta to do this, to go out and look for real statistical use cases to anchor it to. It's saying that's the probability of somebody like 50 making it to 65. And today's health conscious world, especially as we are being, we're fairly healthy as people, that seems very likely that you're going to make it. Makes sense too. But one of the great things about the app that I really loved at the initial outset when I first developed this with her, this is, by the way, I'm on to version 3 of this thing. One of the things that is important is these what if scenarios. And what ifs are best handled by these concepts of sliders. So in this case, I can always go up and down, 80% chance, similar to a college freshman graduating in 4 years. Okay, that's a pretty good stat. But you can see here, we start off with an existing portfolio number. And what we want to see is, how does that affect us over time? And so, for example, I'm right now 90%. If I increase my spending to 92, remember we said 84,000. Let's just say that we need 90,000, and Alex is going to retire at 63. Well, you still have a 6% failure rate, but that's really low in comparison. But you have toggles to be able to go through the system, and look, the application is going to update in real time as we're moving through some of our assumptions. And this is something you can do. This app has now been developed. So what we want to also look at is also the Roth conversion schedule. You have an income waterfall basically telling you kind of what your portfolio draws will look like. And then when Social Security kicks in, how much you're going to be making and how much you actually need to take from the, your portfolio to meet your requirements. And so that's what this is saying. We need, and we can go through and you kind of, this is very similar to, like, I think Boldin does something similar. And I kind of instructed her to make this kind of concept, and this is what she came up with. How spending gets covered each year, inflation adjusted, portfolio draw equals spending minus Social Security. This is the key here that I think, these tabs can continue to go on for quite a while, but this is something that it came up with just recently. I've actually taken this part of the app and put it into my real one that I've been using for myself. I found this to be tremendously helpful. I'm going to change a couple things on this, but you can see here, you're getting your Roth conversion schedule, and then you're getting essentially what your tax drag will look like at the different schedule types, points. And then it's telling you how much you should be doing in conversions along the way. Now, as we hit 73, we're going to have to take about $170,000 out, right? So behooves us to really get into the right tax bracket. But you can also see here, based upon the fact that we're married filing jointly, we're going to be in 31% tax bracket. So this person needs to start drawing down much sooner than they can if they don't want that tax bomb. The other part of the application that I really love, and this is something that another app does this very well, and I stole that idea and I asked her to do it like this, and this is what she came up with. FiCalc, that app, does things where it looks in periods and tells you what your portfolio will do in those kind of time slices. And I asked her, well, why don't you make the base case? Why don't you tell me what a bull case is, right? In this case, she says we're going to have greater than 1% returns, and where we delay Social Security is 67 because that's the maximum we can get. And he says that if we do it that way, we're going to have 3 basis points greater. It sounds like to me she shouldn't do this. Then we look at a bad first sequence of returns, and this is what she came up with. It's still going to be very healthy. It's just there's a possibility you could run out of money. And then here's another one where we don't do any Roth conversion. Well, we're definitely going to, all that this is saying is just the likelihood of whether or not we can succeed in our plan. And that's all Monte Carlo should really tell us, is how reliable is the information we've given, and then how accurate we're going to be based upon the scenarios we've given it. So this was generated on the fly. Let me show you what I've done in my app. And this is my current app today. Now, I'm running this in what's called a sandbox. It's free because the actual application is an app. It's code, but it's transportable. You can take it anywhere. You can run it. So in my case, it's the same kind of deal. We're going to go to this, and I've basically changed a lot of things like coloring, etc. And it's the same application with now this additional Roth conversion schedule. And I put it in, I've actually just taken what she's built just recently and put it in here. And it says ERA's Roth conversion strategy, 22% tax bracket, which is kind of what I tell it to do, to stick in there. And we convert $100,000 from age 60 to 72, and reducing the RMD bomb from $272,000 a year to $28,000 a year by age 73. That's a lot. So I don't know how that's all going to work out, but I've got this thing where it's saying where your state is, and this is kind of adjustable. Again, this is for me, but if you wanted to go to a non-taxable state like Florida, or if you go out of the country, then you can toggle back and forth and see what the implications could be. Right. So the other thing also that I've added that I like in my version of this is this concept of a spending smile. And if you are familiar with, I believe his name is Thomas Blanchett, he's saying that spending is never linear. It goes in like a curve, like a parabolic curve, because chances are when you retire in your able years, you're going to do a lot of traveling. You're going to do probably exciting things, as we should. We spend a lot in those years, but then over time, naturally, our bodies are, we're getting older. You're not going to want to do those things as much, and you tend to not spend as much. And this is true because I've spoken to a lot of folks who are in their 60s and 70s, and they kind of live a sedentary life. So you spend a lot less. Now, the reason why it goes back up is obviously because of healthcare. So, you can spend a lot more for doctors and possible kinds of things that happen. So that's what this does. But essentially, it's the same kind of concept. I've just enhanced it. But the point of this, and the reason I'm showing it to you, is that this was all generated by Claude. And it's all generated from the data I gave it. I can take this application and use it somewhere else. And that's what I find to be the most exciting thing about AI, is that it's helping me understand retirement and the probabilities of being able to retire with the same kind of concepts that Boldin or Empower or Right Capital, all of those solutions can do, but I'm doing it within this solution. Now, the other thing also is I use the guardrails. I've told it that, and it's built that into the Monte Carlo. So that's kind of where I think a lot of AI is really helpful, on top of which it's a running state of things that you can continually ask of it. It's not going to go away. And it's not like an Excel spreadsheet, which has information that's obviously very useful, but the interpretation of that information is extremely hard, especially with the fact that you don't even know whether those inputs you are putting into by your own calculations are, accurate. And that's, I think, where the evolution of this has become. Very complex calculations, typically, we do it in a spreadsheet, we model it, and Excel is probably the best prototyping solution out there. But something like this, where it becomes very complicated, it's better to go out to sources that know what they're saying and doing, cultivate that and curate it, and then put it into something where it can work with it. And that is the benefit of AI. It's not just like this kind of weird, texting engine and things like that. On top of which, I can peek into this code and look at everything it's doing. Everything in here is a constant, and it buzz it in code. Obviously, you have to be proficient with that. Thank you very much for watching. That's it for now. I really hope that this may help you. If you are interested in kind of knowing a bit more how this was done, feel free to reach out to me on my in the description below. Yeah, I'm just impressed with it. So with that, I'm out.